This apartment, they are charging $19.95 for a singular room, where the fridge is right next to 4 bunk beds. Apparently 3 people are supposed to live here.
When I moved into my 2-bedroom apartment in 2017, my rent was $1,100. I'm lucky that my unit is rent controlled and I've only had an increase of about a few $100. The same unit today costs $1,850. That's an extra $750 per month. Today, I could not afford that on my budget. For people like myself who scored an affordable unit years ago, re-entering the market today does not make sense.
Hello, my name is Tiffany. I have been here for 4 years in Sandy Hill in my apartment, and my rent is $1,200. My apartment's a full 1-bedroom apartment. It's not a bachelor. I have separate walls. I have a rooftop balcony. I have a little extra amenities. Let's say I was to pay the same amount that I pay now in that neighborhood, I'm gonna have to take some sort of sacrifice.
The average price of rent differs by neighborhood. Tiffany pays below the average price for a 1-bedroom in Sandy Hill. The city councillor for the Sandy Hill ward says the problem is linked to a lack of supply of affordable housing and the way that the market is structured.
Prices in general, not just in Ottawa and other big cities, are a bit absurd. It's $2,100, I think, now for a 1-bedroom. I'm not sure who can afford that on like a normal salary.
The question of how much rental housing there is and how much it costs doesn't just involve landlords. There's a history here.
When the federal government really pulled out of the housing game in the 1990s, we saw many decades of a lack of new rental homes and new non-market homes being delivered to our communities.
When Doug Ford was elected Ontario's premier in 2018, his government's solution to the housing crisis was to build more. In November of that year, he announced that all new rental buildings will be exempt from rent control as a way to incentivize developers. Increased supply means lower demand, and lower demand means lower price, right? Well, that hasn't been the case in Ontario or the rest of the country.
We really left the private market to solve the problem, so we saw an increase in condos and a lot more expensive units being delivered to folks where they can't actually afford or access those homes.
So what does the market look like for people trying to find affordable rent right now?
So I used to live in Ottawa about 2 years ago, Kirkwood area. And the rent at that time was $700, but it was a subsidized house. It was a 3-bedroom house.
Mayda Alfaro moved to Montreal with her 10-year-old daughter to pursue an education. Recently, she decided to return to Ottawa to be closer with family. And while her budget hasn't really changed, the market certainly did.
I've been searching for over 2 months in Ottawa, and the prices are just incredibly high. I'm still searching, and I still have like 1.5 months to go to come back, and I'm looking for maybe 1,100 before to 1,800 a month. It's crazy.
So we know single moms who have dependents who are competing in the market for the same rents, for the same units, with someone who maybe doesn't have a child or is making that higher wage because they're a man. We know that those folks are really struggling as well.
I want to say I can afford it for the first maybe 6 months because I do have money saved up, and that's the only reason why I'd be able to afford it. But I mean, after my savings, what am I supposed to do?
What do you think governments could be doing to kind of ease this crisis?
Well, senior levels of government can look at making good on the right to housing. They can be investing a lot more in non-market housing. So putting in the kind of capital that will enable a project to rent at affordable rates.
It looks as though there may be some hope for some renters. Last year, the federal government announced the Housing Accelerator Fund. City of Ottawa recently secured over $176 million from that fund and says it'll put most of it towards nonprofit housing. The city set a target for 2,000 new affordable dwellings to be built in the next 2 years.